Hello. We have Chapter 1, EMS Systems. The EMS system basically is a team of healthcare professionals that provides emergency care and transport and are governed by state laws. We're going to train you for your certification, your state certification, national certification for your EMS certification. Most states have four training levels and licensure levels: EMR, EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic. Here in the state, most people start at the EMT level. Some will then advance on to the advanced EMT level, which is below the paramedic, and then on to paramedic. The EMR, they provide has very basic training and provide basic care prior to the ambulance arrival and may assist within the ambulance. They basically know CPR and very, very little else. Yourselves as in EMT school, you have training in basic life support, BLS, to include how to use an AED, airway adjuncts, medication assistance, bandaging, splinting, and so on. The AMTA has all the training of an EMT, plus learns how to start IVs, intravenous therapy, and also how to administer certain emergency medications out in the field. And then the paramedic has extensive advanced life support training, ALS, to include endotracheal intubation, emergency pharmacology, cardiac monitoring. Plus, they have all the other training, EMT, and what the advanced EMT knows, as well as the ALS. Requirements for EMT differ from state to state, but general requirements required to be an EMT is a high school diploma or equivalent, proof of immunization against certain communicable diseases, and a valid driver's license. Your successful completion of EMT school will include a BLS CPR course, a state-approved course, which you're taking a written certification exam that state recognizes you taking the national registry test as the state test. And then your practical certification exam, which is doing your skills. Basically, EMTs are the backbone of the whole EMS system. You'll be providing care to sick and injured people. Some patients are in life-threatening situations. Others only require supportive care. Some of the subjects that we'll be discussing in our training is scene size up, patient assessment, treatment, packaging the patient, and talking about EMS as a career. So with the history of EMS as we know it today originated in roughly 1966, but it also goes back way back into World War I, and with volunteer ambulances, and then field care started in World War II, and then field medics and rapid helicopter evacuation started in the Korean conflict. But as we see it today, it started roughly in 1966 And it started with a publication of Accidental Death and Disability, the Neglected Disease of Modern Society. And it was published by the Department of Transportation, and they took over that because originally this started in 1966. They were looking at expanding the roadway systems across the U.S. and going from 1 and 2 lane roads up to freeways. And so the accidents were increasing, and the major trauma from the car accidents, because there were more cars on the road, traveling faster, traveling further. They needed something to help with. So the DOT took it under their wing and published the first training curriculum in the early 70s. And efforts now are underway to standardize the levels of EMS education nationally. At the federal level, the state level, and the local level. At the federal level, National EMS Scope of Practice Model provides guidelines for EMS skills. They're the ones that say you need to know how to do these skills. To be an EMT, you need to know these skills as an EMT, plus whatever you need to be an EMTA or a paramedic. The state law regulates you as an EMS provider operations. The state's going to say what you can and can't do. You may be trained at the national level, but the state says, well, we're not going to go that far, or we're going to go above that and provide other care. And then at the local level, your medical director decides the day-to-day limits of you as an EMS personnel, what you can and can't do. There's millions of lay people trained in BLS, CPR, teachers, coaches, child care providers, people who regularly accompany groups on trips to remote locations. And the AEDs, the automatic external defibrillators, are now used by lay people. Overall, it's a very simple machine to operate because you turn it on, you turn on the button that says push here on, and it will walk you through the use of the AED. Some other personnel that are medical responders, law enforcement, firefighters, park rangers, ski patrollers. And what they do is they initiate immediate care and assist EMTs upon their arrival. And don't forget about the Good Samaritans that are trained in first aid and CPR. A lot of times there'll be a Good Samaritan on the scene before you even get there. So the EMT course requires about 150 hours. Ours is 176. So, there's quite a few hours put in, and you're going to have the knowledge and skills to provide basic emergency care. When you arrive upon the scene, you assume responsibility for care, packaging, and transporting the patient until somebody with equal or greater training than you shows up on the scene. So the components of the EMS system, there are 14 components. The public access, easy access for help in an emergency situation is essential. Our communication system, the caller receives the information, then the dispatcher, who is part of the communication system, the dispatcher selects appropriate parts of the emergency system to activate. such as somebody's injured and there's a fire involved, they would also activate you as the EMS side and the fire side. They dispatch police. The clinical care describes the pieces of equipment used, and it also directs your scope of practice for using the equipment. And it familiarizes you as an EMT with the ambulance controls and your primary service area. Human resources, this focuses on the people who deliver the care and compensation. There's always a human resource office in every business. Medical direction. Medical direction is the doctor that authorizes you as an EMT to provide medical care in the field. And care, you can describe it as either standing orders and protocols. Protocols are the written version of what you can and can't do. Standing orders are the things that you can do without contacting medical control or medical direction. Legislation and regulation, this covers training protocols and practices following state legislation. And then integration of health services, the pre-hospital care by you as an EMT is coordinated with care administered by a hospital or at the hospital. And basically, care simply continues in the emergency department, ensuring that the patient receives comprehensive continuity of care. Evaluation. Once again, evaluation is formed by the medical director maintaining quality control and continuous quality improvement. Your reports that you write are going to be going through QI to make sure that they're being done right and if there's any improvement that could be done. It also involves refresher training or continuing education. And the whole key behind the evaluation is to minimize errors. That's the goal. Information systems, this is a system that's used to document the care that has been provided. Finance, it varies depending on the organization involved, whether it's an all-volunteer squad or a paid squad, or it could be a mix. Continuing education, number 11, the education system. Continuing ed is needed to update knowledge and refresh skills. Every month that you're in this business, you will have some form of continuing education. Prevention and public education, they're kind of mixed together. These are two components of the EMS system that focuses on public health. And it may be that you're teaching a CPR course or a first aid course or doing a talk on how to stay safe and healthy. And then EMS research. This helps determine the shape and impact that EMS has on the community. And as an EMT, you very well may be involved in research through gathering data. Some roles and responsibilities of the EMT. You're going to be giving emergency care to the patient, and you'll be doing this while waiting arrival of additional medical resources if they are needed. We're only going to move patients when absolutely necessary to preserve life, meaning we have somebody critical, but we have to move them to be able to work on them. So we might move them before the additional medical resources arrive. We give emotional support most of the time to the patient, to the family, and other responders. You need to maintain continuity of care by working with other medical professionals. You might be working with fire, guys getting off fire engine. You're on the ambulance, you're working together. You work together to help resolve emergency incidents. You're also held to a higher level when you're wearing the uniform, and you uphold medical and legal standards. You also want to ensure medical privacy and patient privacy. You can talk amongst yourselves when you're coming back from a call about a call or at the station, but you're not supposed to be putting that out for everybody to hear. Be very careful with your social media. That'll get you in more trouble than you can imagine. Give administrative support. One of the ways you can give administrative support is by doing good reporting. So when they need to get information to get new equipment or more personnel, you've done your job by giving that administrative support by doing good reports. You need to constantly continue professional development. That's where the CE comes in, continuing education. Cultivate and sustain community relations. Get out there in front of the public. Remember, when you're riding on an engine, you're riding on an ambulance, you're riding on a rolling backboard. A billboard, I mean, not a backboard, but a billboard. People see what you're doing, and if they don't think it's right, they're liable to report you. But do your best to cultivate and sustain community relations. Get out in the public, talk to the public. And then giving back to the profession. You can give back more ways than one. One of the ways, maybe you have a neighborhood association where you live. You have a meeting and you say, hey, can I come in and, spend 10, 15 minutes talking about fire safety during the holiday season? Or, it's getting summer, you want to go swimming, you have swimming pools, pool safety. That's how you give back to the profession. You get out there and talk to people what they can do to stay safe and healthy. You need to have professional attributes, integrity. You need to have empathy. You need to understand being aware of being sensitive to what the patient's going through. This is a job where we need to be self-motivated. Appearance and hygiene. Which one would you rather have come help you, the guy on the right or the guy on the left? You need to have self-confidence and be able to manage your time. Sometimes you don't have a long time to stay on the scene with a patient. You need to get them to more definitive care than what you can give them. You need to have good communication skills, be able to talk and communicate with people, because you're going to be dealing with people's of all different kinds out there, different races, different ideas. But you got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to keep your feelings under control. You're going to work in teams. You got to be able to be a team player, good teamwork and diplomacy. Respect. You got to treat everybody with dignity and respect. all your patients, all the time, every time. They're having the worst day of their life at that moment that they have called you and you show up. Sometimes they're not going to be nice to you. I get that. But them being upset, are they upset at you or are they upset at the situation? Or maybe they're having a medical problem, a diabetic type problem, where they didn't take their insulin, they didn't take their glucose, they're not getting sugar to the brain. So they direct it towards you, but they don't mean to do it that way. Be a patient advocate. Sometimes you got to do stuff for a patient that's not in your scope of practice, but it's not immoral, it's not illegal. It's like getting Miss Smith a warm blanket in the hospital after you've dropped the patient off. And she's not even your patient. She's in the room next door to where you had just dropped off a patient. And she says, Sonny, can you get me a warm blanket? I'm cold. They're not hard to find. If you don't know where they are in the ER, ask one of the nurses and they'll tell you where it is. And you go get Mrs. Smith a warm blanket. It's a big giant, looks like a refrigerator, except it's a heater. And you're going to get her a warm blanket. Better yet, you go, you know, if that was my mother or my grandmother or grandfather, I'm going to go ahead and get them 2 blankets. You know what? I'd suggest getting them 3 blankets. You're going to take them back and you're not just going to throw them on her. You're going to open them up, open the first one up, put it over her, get it up towards her neck, ask her how she's doing. I know she's not your patient, but this is being a patient advocate. And then she goes, well, I'm still kind of cold. Well, you got the second blanket. You put that on her. And then the third blanket, you just drape over her feet. So she has a third blanket in case she gets cold. And she tells you thank you, and you're going to walk out of there going, wow, that didn't hurt at all. Patient advocate. It's not hard to do. Treat everybody with respect. You got to do it. Sometimes it gets a little hard, but you have to suck it up and give them respect. Make sure you give careful delivery of care. Don't do anything out of your scope of practice. Don't do anything that's immoral, illegal. And as the bottom line, every patient is entitled to compassion, respect, and the best care. And as healthcare professionals, you're bound by patient confidentiality. You can't be going out and talking to everybody. Don't forget about HIPAA. And as a healthcare provider, EMTs are bound by that confidentiality. Be familiar with the requirements of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Know your HIPAA laws. This is the end of Chapter 1.